Hello and welcome back to the boatyard where I keep my fiberglass cabin cruiser Twiggy. It is a glorious day. In fact, the weather has sort of swung the wrong way. The last couple of weeks it's been below 15 degrees Celsius. I wanted it at about 16, 17, ideal for fiberglassing. But no, we've got glorious sun. It's predicted to go at least above 25 degrees Celsius today. So far, in the shade, I'd estimate we are at perfect fiberglassing temperatures. So the plan for today is mix up some brand new, fresh from the factory vinyl ester resin, some 1708 and some fiberglass shreds, and fix those holes that I widened out in the last video, and so remake the corners of the boat. And if you have forgotten or just not seen them, those are the back corners of the boat, which I accidentally put a hole through right at the start of the process, but in the last video have ground out to give me some fresh fiberglass on which I can now stick my repair. First things first though, I didn't do any vacuuming when I was making all that mess last time, and it's still all there underneath the tarp, so I'm going to get the hoover out and give everything a good clean. I have vacuumed the dust away from that, especially from these corner bits. I'm going to wipe it down with acetone next. In the meantime, I've also set up my workstation, complete with brand new fresh vinyl ester, 1 litre, and a little bottle of the MEKP. I call it a hardener. It's not really a hardener, is it? It's an activator. And then there are all my tools. Stirrer sticks, that's the acetone there, pot of, brush, scissors for cutting the fiberglass, some chopped strand for mixing up a gooey resin to fill with, and weighing scales. And in there, that long package there, is lots of 1708 fiberglass. I would normally put on this coverall for doing this kind of thing, but it's so warm today, and I'm dressed in my skankiest old DIY clothes, which don't matter if I get fiberglass on them, so I will just put, I think, the mask on for today. Oh, and some gloves, of course. That fiberglass is itchy stuff. Right, I have here one roll of 3 metre by 1 metre, actually 1.2 metres, of 1708. That's what it's called in America. I don't think it's called that over here, but it's chopped strand mat on one side and a diagonal fiberglass weave on the other. Apparently very strong and very super, as recommended by my favourite fiberglassing channel, Fish Bump TV. Now what I need to do is measure up strips that I need to cover up these holes. So we have 50 centimetres by, slightly annoyingly, 9 at the top and 6 at the bottom. So I'll do 50 by 9 and then trim it to fit as I hold it up to the piece. So remember that, 50 by 9. And then on the other side, also 50. I did do a much better job on the other side. It's a 50 by 6 on the other side, consistently all the way down. So anyway, right. What I haven't got is any kind of marker pen, which is also slightly annoying. I don't know if that's a straight edge. I suspect not, but anyway, right, 50. How am I going to do this without a marker pen? I'll just have to do it with the scissors. And yes, I know what you're thinking. The mask doesn't do an awful lot just dangling around my neck, but there's no fraying fibres yet, so we're all right. So there's 50. I'll just do a little mark so I know where that is. And it needs to come in by 9. I tell you what, it's going to be very boring to watch. Let us do a clock wipe to the future when I've cut all the strips. Ah, the magic of the clock wipe. I do enjoy one. I have cut 4 strips. It was going to be 1 long strip down, and then it all went a bit wrong, so I'm going to do it as 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. They fit there. I'm just going to do that side to start with, and then I'll worry about the other side. So I need to do what I was going to do, which was wipe some acetone down so it's all nice and clean, ready for the new fiberglass. I have big bottle and little bottle of acetone. I need a cloth.
Right, I need to do a little bit of maths now. I've got 53 grams of fiberglass. So you want 2 to 2.5 times the weight of the fiberglass for the resin, so that's 53 times 2 is 106, times 2 is 212, let's say 250 grams of resin. And then for that amount of resin I would need, takes about the same in mil, so it's got it written on the back actually in tiny writing, 250 grams. Actually, you can't read it. I think it says 5 mil of hardener. Anyway, let's weigh out the resin. What did I just say? 250 grams? Seems like a lot. It does seem like a lot for a small amount. 250? 50 grams of that. Yes, times 2 is 100. I've overdone it, haven't I? What is wrong with me today? 50 times 2 is 106, plus a bit, 150. Right, I'm going to decant it back. Right, need to add a bit of hardener, give it all a stir, and stick it on. Now again, hardener ratio, 2% of 160 grams. Would be 16. No, hang on. Hang on. Let's have another clock wipe. Right, I did work out the number, I can't remember how much it was, but it's about this much. So squish it in, squish it on, and all is well. Okay. And quickly mix it very thoroughly. I think we'll call that mixed. Brush, brush, brush. It's the first time I've used this 1708. It's distinctly different to the chopped strand mat. However, I've got loads left, so I might quickly cut some for the other side. If I'm very quick.
It's not terribly pretty, but it's covered the hole, and it's not finished yet. That's just 2 layers of that fiberglass stuff, and then on top of that I'm going to load up some resin with strands in it to make a gloopy gunk that goes on top of that to then shape it to the corner. Once again, I think the second corner was done better, and I've also put a little patch over that hole there, which again, not pretty, but it's going to need quite a lot of filling. That really was one of my more substantial mistakes that I made there, but never mind. I mean, the thing about fiberglass is it's all just one big glue set. Nothing that can't be filled with more glue. But I did have a bit too much resin, so it's a good thing I didn't make up the 250 grams I did originally. What did I end up with? 160 grams of resin for 53 grams. Yeah, 2.5 it said. 2 to 2.5 of resin. I think it should have been 2 of resin. That would have been about right. So I'll bear that in mind for the next time. As I say, it's the first time I've used this 1708 stuff, which is thicker and doesn't seem to soak up the resin like the Chop Strand matte did. I think with the Chop Strand matte, it's mostly resin and a bit of matte, whereas with this stuff, it's mostly matte with a little bit of resin. So I'll go on a ratio of 2 times resin to weight of fiberglass on the next bit. And I have just remembered there's another bit I haven't done, tiny little bit down the bottom there that needs doing, so I'll get that mixed up in a second. Well, I think we can safely say that the outcome so far today is that I have made a lot of mess, largely over me. Notwithstanding wearing gloves and things, somehow I still managed to get fiberglass resin all over me. I don't understand it. I had all the stuff on and I still managed to get sticky. Anyway, I have now stuck fiberglass on those holes. I'm going to let that dry a bit. I would say have some lunch, but I have failed to bring, can you believe this, any sandwiches with me at all, cheese or otherwise. I think I've got a banana in the car, so that's going to have to constitute my lunch. And then when this is all dried a bit, I'm going to mix up those Chop Strand bits, make it into the gooey resin, and then fill round the corners. Disappointing news. I am very unhappy with how this has turned out. Firstly, it's still tacky and it's been at least half an hour, and in this temperature I'd expect it to properly dried off. Secondly, it really hasn't adhered properly. It's going to be a bit hard to show, but when I tap on it you can see that it hasn't fully adhered, and I can pick it off at the edges. So I don't know whether I put too little catalyst in or too much catalyst. No, too much would have made it harder, wouldn't it? Or just didn't put enough actual resin on. I mean, I thought I was slapping it on. It was all dripping off. But I clearly haven't. And if you come down here, you can sort of see there's a lighter patch here where I haven't got enough resin on. And if I prod it, I don't know if you can see, but it's moving. And that should be stuck. So I think I'm going to have to let this set and then, God help me, grind it all off again and do it again. I mean, that is clearly not fully resined, and I slapped the blooming resin on. I don't know why it now doesn't have enough. This is madness, I tell you. Update, 2 minutes later, I peeled the second layer off and it just came straight off. But underneath that, the first layer I put on does actually seem to be stuck. So it's just that the second layer wasn't sticking to the first. And that's okay, because I can easily cut another second layer, mix up some more stuff and put that on. And try and do a better job of it this time, so I'll fix that. I've just redone that with one continuous piece on top of it, and then a second piece down the bottom there. I've slapped resin on, but I've also rolled it so there's not too much. And if that doesn't stick, I may well take up people's idea of just setting fire to the boat. I don't know. On the positive side, this bit on the port side, which has always been the one I did better, usually because it's the one I did second, that is actually hardening up nicely. So I'll give it a bit longer. I'll go and have that banana for lunch. There's a little cafe somewhere around here. I might try and go and get a cup of tea, and then come back and do the other bit with the thickened resin. It is a little while later. It turns out there is indeed a cafe on site on this industrial estate. Very friendly lady running it, who made me the most enormous cheese sandwich in every dimension. It was this big and bit cheese falling out of it. All very good indeed. So I am now full, and of course full enough that actually I quite fancy a little nap but a nap I shall not have. I shall press on. The fiberglass is setting well. My car says it's 30 degrees Celsius today, and I can believe it. It's very warm, so the fiberglass is setting and seems to be setting nicely. I'm not sure that showing it to you really proves anything, but I have tapped it and it is pretty much dry and it feels pretty solid. So that is ready for phase 2, which is ladling up this thickened resin on top of it. I will also ladle thickened resin to try and fill this a bit. I mean, obviously, when I put the new transom in, there's going to be a whole new sheet of fiberglass wrapping over the whole of this anyway. So this is sort of patch filling. Then new transom, entire sheet of new fiberglass round both sides, which will cover any of this nastiness. So that's all good. And as we wander over to this side, as I did this one just before I went off for lunch, it's still a tiny bit tacky, but it is looking much better than it was. The idea with the thickened resin is that I've bought this tub of chopped strands, which is exactly as its name suggests, strands of fiberglass which you mix into the resin to make a thickened paste, and that can then go and ultimately be sanded and shaped. Unfortunately, unlike strips of fiberglass which I can weigh and then work out how much resin I need, I have no idea really how much of the little strands I will need to thicken up the resin and to fill what I need to fill, so I'm going to have to just mix a pot and guess.
I'm going to do half of that, I think. Should be about 400, I think. Right, that's 300. Let's go with that. So then I need some hardener. There's the hardener. 300 would be... Now, stick some of this in.
I couldn't move the camera once I'd started, which is why I only showed you me doing the left bit, but I've done some other bits as well. And although it was a bit gloopy to start, of course it then did start setting. So I've done 2 lots on this. It's hard to show, but that's now got 2 good dollops on. And a fair bit of dolloping in there, not enough to fill the hole. And I know it looks rough and ready, but of course that is the glorious thing, as I've already shown about fiberglass, is you can sand it and grind it and whatever, so the fact that it looks a bit manky round the edges doesn't really matter. Now I've also been pondering what to do with this hole, which long-time viewers will remember was where there was a drain hole in the back of the boat, which I don't want, so I've filled it in. I've put some of the filler there, and I've built up the edges round here, because I'm going to put a bit across there, basically seal off the bilges. I don't want a bung in the back of the boat. I know it's a thing for trail boats, but I don't want anything resembling a hole in the back of the boat that water could come in. I'd rather have a bilge pump, which is what I shall have. So I've done that, and I've also put some gunge in here. There was a sort of U shape to this channel, not my doing, it's how it was. So I filled that in to pad it out a bit, make it more of a flat edge for the new transom to go against. Same over there, gunge down the bottom, gunged up there. I only mixed enough to do 1 coat on this side, so I'm going, if I've got enough mixing bowls and sticks and things, I am going to mix a little more now and do a second load up that one. You'll notice I haven't filled these holes yet, and they are so small that I think the 6mm fibres will be too big. What I've also got is some colloidal silica which you can mix into the resin that makes more of a paste, and I think that will be better for these small screw holes. Unfortunately, I'm down to my last mixing jar, and rather stupidly when I bought these I hadn't thought they'd be single use, but of course as soon as they got fiberglass in them and it's all setting, the thing becomes useless. So I don't like throwing away plastic after single use. I need to get some paper mixing cups. That was a silly purchase. And there we go, that is it for another day. Useful progress, I think. Both those holes down the side are now filled or covered. Bearing in mind, as I mentioned earlier, that I will later be sanding them and then going over them with an entire piece of fiberglass, indeed multiple pieces of fiberglass that wrap around the whole back. So it's going to have so much glass over the top of it by the time the boat relaunches, there really shouldn't be any reason why water should get in. There should be no evidence of hole anymore, apart from if you peer too closely at parts of the back cabin where you can just see daylight poking. Well, you can't see daylight now because I filled it, but you could see daylight poking through. So that just needs to set for a bit, which it will do very quickly on a day like today, and I will come back next time, I suppose, to start measuring up for the transom. That's an exciting moment. Anyway, see you then. Well, I won't see you then, you'll see me then. You know what I mean. Cheerio.